Alright guys, this is Burt from Soft Tubes, and I'm back with another movie review doing Lego Movie 2. Now, this is actually a bit of a late review in some ways, and not that late in other ways, because the film actually came out in the US back in February. In Australia, it still hasn't officially released. It has had a couple of preview screenings, but that's been it. It isn't actually out yet. So I'm seeing it late for the US, but early for most of Australia. So it's kind of a weird spot. I'm going to try and avoid spoilers in this movie, but some might slip out. So just be a little bit cautious of that, but I'm going to do my best to not give away anything too major. Might hint at stuff, but that should hopefully be it. Now, if you saw the first movie, you know what to expect at this point. Lego heroes on an adventure to save the day, and it's juxtaposed with the real life actions of a family going about creating those adventures, essentially. And it's really just more of that, except this time, like in the last film, it was kind of the big reveal of like, oh, it's actually a father and son playing, or the son playing and the father being like, no. This time, it's weird because it's still not overt about it, but it keeps hinting at it more heavily, and it keeps on showing it more often, which is a little bit interesting compared to what the first film did. But I guess at this point it's not a surprise, but then it still sort of treats it as a surprise, which is a little weird to me. It doesn't say like, oh no, that's not happening, like, oh, and then it is, but then it's not going like, this is what it is, because it still like flashes that the character, like, Emmett sees flashes of the real world, and that's kind of the first reintroduction of that element. So it's kind of odd. But then, and in that way, the movie does open up more questions. Then some of those are coming off things that the first film started, but it also adds to those, and it never actually answers a lot of stuff, especially in the way that of what's happening to the Lego characters and how that's influenced by the real life. Is everything a one-to-one? Whatever the kids or even the dad in the first one are pretending is happening is with what we're watching in the movie, or is there something else? Because as we saw in the first one, like, Emmett goes into the real world and he knows it and can still move. So is that then, are the Lego people actually still alive? And that's something that never really gets questioned. I don't know if it needs to, but then it's weird because then we get more questions about that, but still no answers. And on that, the twist of this film, it's not like the first one. The first one I thought was really clever and really well done, and a really nice way to actually give the message of the film. This time, the message is still entwined in the twist. It's a little bit obvious if you're paying attention to the movie. We're compared to I think the first one, you probably still get hints, but it's not as obvious. This one, like, I kind of guessed almost exactly what it was going to be early on. Some of it does require knowledge of outside the film and in production and stuff, so maybe you won't fully get it, but it still works, it's still effective, still does everything you kind of want it to do. I've seen the movie twice now, once by myself, and originally that was the only time I was planning on seeing it, but then I went and saw it with my sister and nephew today, and both times it seems like the twist was pretty effective for most people. So people seem to be like, oh, okay, oh crap, like, that's what's happening now. The problem is, though, and seeing a couple of people mention this, this film doesn't have that spark of originality that the first film did. And I mean, that kind of be expected. It's similar to the problem Deadpool had. The first Deadpool was really unique and new, even though it's weird because it feels fresh. It may not necessarily be everything about it is fresh, but it feels fresh, and that's probably more important than anything. And then Deadpool 2 kind of loses a bit of that. This is kind of the same case, where this film doesn't feel as original as the first one did. And I mean, it's incredible because the first one should have been a purely commercial a commercial made into a movie. And it somehow wasn't just that. This one feels a little bit more that way, just slightly, but it still captures most of the magic of the movie. even though now it's a bit more obvious. It's not as subtle what was so special about the first one. Here it's a bit more on display. And I mean, for the most part, most things still work. The characters still have the same sort of chemistry. Even the ones that kind of have very little development, including, I believe it's Benny, the spacesuit man, the spaceship. I really love Benny, but there's a few characters that don't really get a lot of development. Like Emmett and Lucy over both films get probably the most development of anyone. That kind of makes sense to the main characters. And Batman got most of his characterization in the Batman Lego film. Whereas here, like, all the side characters don't really develop any further. But it doesn't matter as much as it could because the film is aware of the fact they don't develop much and points it out. That's a cheap way of getting around it. But in a movie like this, it actually works. If you tried to do that in something else, it'd feel a bit like, well, yeah, okay, whatever. Here, you're kind of like, oh, yeah, Lego people. And they're just like, they're based on, like, especially older Lego characters like Benny. They're based on one very specific thing. He's a spaceman. And that's his character. So it makes sense. And then some of the references didn't quite land so well for me. And I don't know, they felt a little shoehorned in, and a couple of them when they came up, I was like, okay, and was pulled out of the movie a little bit. I don't think they were great as the first one. They weren't terrible, per se. They weren't necessarily anything really bad. They just weren't as, like, built into the story of it as you did with the references in the first one, I felt. And it could also just be me being a bit older. It's sort of changed how I view some of those things. I'm not, like, as willing to accept them as I was in the first film. And that could also be because it doesn't feel as fresh anymore. The first one felt so original that even if the references weren't great, it's still packaged well. Here, you've lost a bit of that. The shine's gone a little bit, so the stuff inside it doesn't look as nice anymore. And you got a bit of dust on the glass cabinet, if you will. And that sort of throws things off. There was points in the movie that I was also pulled out in because of pacing or timing of things. It's just certain moments in the movie sort of happened. And again, it's not terrible. It's just they were sort of noticeable and weirdly paced. There was just something slightly off. And I was just sitting there going like, okay, why are we doing, like, why is this taken so long? Or why have we sort of jumped this? And I think a lot of it was compression of script. They just needed to get stuff done, or they needed to, like, they wanted more bits focused on, but it sort of left some scenes in kind of weird spots. And I mean, and it's weird because on writing, the themes and messages of the film are pretty much as overt as you would expect for a kids movie. They're not trying to be too subtle and hopefully get, like, sneak stuff in, because, like, that kids, you typically try to put stuff on the table, make it very obvious, and part of that's for the parents, so the parents know what message the movie's giving their kids. Parents don't want to go see a movie and then go, I don't know what my kid's getting out of this. They want to be able to go, cool, my kid's learning to share with other kids. Like, that's a good message. I endorse that. They want that on the table so they can then make the decision of, like, this was worth showing to my child. And I mean, the only problem was sometimes this movie felt like it struggled a little bit with its themes, because it wanted to do a few different things, and because of that, it only really touches on them rather than really pushing them. There was an interesting part, though, where it actually points out that one of the main themes it sells, which was a really important theme about, kind of like Inside Out, where the theme is about not everything is going to be happy and perfect. It's sort of similar to that. But then the movie actually goes to making a point that that's not its main theme, that is actually almost a metaphor in itself for the real theme of the film, which has more to do with imagination and growing up. Which, I mean, you get hints of throughout the movie, but it's a little jarring when suddenly a character is like, this is actually what the movie's about. Essentially. It's a little weird to have that. But, it still works for me. It kind of was delivered in a way that it still worked. It's a little odd. I feel like, I don't know, maybe that was because that was a message that they thought was too subtle, so they had to say it. And maybe it was. Maybe it was a hard message to sell without having a character just state it out. But, essentially, if you enjoyed the first movie, then you're probably going to enjoy this one. I think you won't enjoy it as much, but I think you'll still enjoy it. I give it personally a 4 out of 5. I actually quite enjoyed it still. The beginning and like not necessarily the beginning, but a little bit early on, it's kind of like, okay, I just want stuff to kind of happen. Like it feels like, and especially on my second viewing, some of the beats that I really enjoyed felt like they took too long to get to. There was a bit too much build up, which I guess is again part of that pacing problem. So yeah, it's not quite as good as the first film, but it's still a good time, pretty fun. Especially if you're taking kids, it's worth taking. So yeah. Yeah, so that's kind of my thoughts on Lego Movie 2. If you may have noticed, the packaging of my reviews has changed a little bit. There's a couple reasons for it. One of them is basically that we were getting copyright hit for the way I was doing the other ones, where I was using clips. So I'm trying something different to see if we can kind of get around that. Still do a review with ink stuff other than just a picture of me. So if I edit this right, there'll be the trailer playing here somewhere. I think some of my like actual analytical videos will stay the same. I'll have to change the format a little bit there, but they'll stay pretty much the same. The other reason is, yeah, I want to try and make everything feel a bit different. I mean, this is probably going to make this feel a bit like the reaction stuff, but I'll try and tweak it as I go. We'll see how it goes overall. Yeah, that's kind of it. Tomorrow should be a review for Fighting With My Family. Another movie I saw both Lego Movie and that yesterday. Again, it's another one that's a bit late for it, but it isn't actually out in Australia yet, so I'm still doing it because I finally got to see it. And yeah, so that'll be out tomorrow, and if any trailers pop up, I'm going to be doing reactions to them, and I'll try and do some analyses of different things, maybe some old films that I like or don't like, and just talk about those as well coming up. So alright, thanks guys for watching. If you agree with my review of the movie, I should have put this first. If you agree with my review of the movie, put a like, or if you like the movie, just do that. If you've got your own thoughts about the film, maybe I missed something. This is kind of just a bare bones review. So yeah, if I missed something or you feel like I should have talked about something or something that you noticed, throw it in the comments. I'd be interested to see. I love seeing people's reactions to movies. This is why I go see movies multiple times all of the time, is I want to see other people react to stuff. Like, I always love that. Anyway, and yeah, hit the subscribe button and that stupid bell thing, and you won't miss any more reviews or reactions or analyses or video games or all sorts of stuff that we got cooking. So, yeah. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next video. Oh! Is that his daughter? Fuck off, Java. What the hell? Fucking stop it.